Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Lazarus. Isn't it funny that whenever you play as Lazarus 1, when you die, actually play as another character called Lazarus 2, which means that the character you lock in at the start isn't the same character that you actually finish the run with, or even, for that matter, it's not the same character that you play the majority of the run with, because most of the time you end up dying as Lazarus 1 or maybe by the third floor. But the fact is, because you play as a completely different character, that also means that with an item like Lazarus' Rags, things don't really work as you would expect them to. How I would imagine that these interactions work is when you die as Lazarus, sure, you come back as another character, but essentially it's still the same character, it's just that your stats increase. Basically, I would imagine that you respawn as the same character who just has more damage, more tears and whatnot, but the fact is you don't respawn as the same character, but you respawn as a different character which has a different stat distribution, which gives the impression that your stats have increased, which means that in this case, if you respawn as Lazarus 2 after you die as Lazarus 1 once, sure, your stats get increased, but if you die a second time with Lazarus' Rex, because that also brings you back as Lazarus 2, nothing changes, which means that essentially, because I picked up that item, it was just... it worked as if I didn't pick up anything, and it's really funny that I didn't really know about this interaction, even though I've played the game for so long. I'm sure that I must have come upon it at one point in the run, but I wasn't just willing to actually sacrifice myself and revive myself twice, because most of the time that doesn't really make a lot of sense. But in this particular case, is because I got health up from my boss, I figured it's probably a good idea to respawn early so I can actually go to the second floor and still have some health, and if there was any luck I was gonna get a spirit heart, and then maybe I can wager that health to actually pick up a devil deal. I really thought that also I will get a damage increase or just a stats increase twice, which would put me in a very, very comfortable position, but as it turns out, nothing really changes, because the second time you die you actually respawn as the completely same character, so Lazarus Rex actually in this case have no effect at all. They could have been used in some regard, maybe if you're planning to use Plan C against maybe Hush, or in this case we don't have Hush. The Void, maybe if you go to, what's it called? The Delirium? I believe it's a Delirium. I still haven't found the Delirium in all of this time, which is a bit crazy when you think about it, but yeah, I haven't found the Delirium, that's why I don't remember the name. So when you actually get to Delirium, I also believe the Plan C doesn't work with Delirium, because you die faster and then only after a few seconds. Yeah, okay, so... no, but you respawn in the same room, so maybe it would work. I'm not really sure at this point. It would definitely be worthy of a trying, but nevertheless, I guess the only value of Lazarus Rex in this case was if you had an item which would maybe respawn you and give you something in return. So something like Suicide King and Plan C, I don't think there are any other items, so obviously quite a stretch to actually get those. But it was just a nice idea, or just a nice experience to actually get this knowledge that Lazarus Rex and Lazarus doesn't do anything. Besides that, so far this run has been going pretty well. The fact is, this is again one of those utility runs, as they like to call them, and usually utility runs rely on me just getting a lot of consumables out of the shop, or items which would boost my consumables, and because of the consumables then I can actually afford to go to secret rooms, second secret rooms, to more shops. I can use my coins in the shops and buy other items and things like that, and this is exactly the case. As it turned out, I got Mama Mega, and maybe the math have shifted a bit, which I didn't really account for in my previous videos, but the fact is, because of the restock machines in the shops, you can essentially, if you have enough money and bombs, eventually force a Mama Mega to spawn, which means that you're not really in a hurry to get to Hush in a lot of cases, or to Boss Rush, because you can always use Mama Mega to actually open that up, and that was an interaction I wasn't really aware of for the longest time, since I actually started playing Afterbirth Plus dailies. But when you use Mama Mega on a floor that goes to Mom, or on a floor that goes to Mom's Heart, you also get Hush or Boss Rush as an opening, kind of as a freebie. It's also good to use if you're just in a hurry. It's okay, because obviously it clears a lot of rooms. I did find that if you use it on Necropolis, like in this case, most often than not you're gonna end up reviving the skulls which are on the ground. The hosts are gonna come out, and it takes quite a while to actually clear those up, but at least they're less dangerous than just regular rooms, which you would usually encounter when you go to Necropolis. What's even better is that this was Necropolis XL, which means that our Mama Mega essentially got 2 uses out of 1, because the floor was that much bigger. And in this case, when I actually get to Boss Rush, even though I'm late, Boss Rush is still gonna be open. What's maybe one thing that not a lot of people would consider is that, sure, you know, you can use Mama Mega to get there, but still you need to spend time, or at least you need to have the knowledge that you're gonna get that Mama Mega later on. And when you have 2 objectives to get to, so Hush and Boss Rush, in this case, because it goes to Mom's Heart, we only have Boss Rush, so we don't even have to worry about Hush. But if you have 2 objectives, I would say that this might be a good strategy still, but the fact is you need to be quite fast, unless maybe you find another Diplopia and you can actually Diplopia Mama Mega, and you have to do that on the Depths 2 floor. Now, I'm sure that's possible, I'm sure that other people have done it, but the fact is, I wouldn't say that it's guaranteed. Getting a Mama Mega, I would say it's very likely, just because there are quite a lot of restock machines, and because obviously you have a lot of money and bombs, and using those maybe just to get a boss rush is a good idea, or maybe just to get a Hush is even better, depending on maybe what your time constraints are. But in a lot of cases, if you can get a Diplopia, like I did in this case, on a floor that goes to Mom, so on the same floor, you would Diplopia Mama Mega, and then you could use one Mama Mega on Boss Rush, and then use the other one on Hush. And like I said, I imagine that that's something that people have employed as their strategy, and I'm not against it, but I definitely think that it's not maybe as guaranteed to get it, even though restock machines are quite often they do appear quite commonly, so I would imagine that there is some wiggle room there, but overall I still feel like using one Mama Mega is something that you would probably go for. And another maybe a trade-off here is that you can't really use any other spacebar items. In this case, what would have been ideal, because I got the Polaroid, I had the Ivy Bag, I also had the Sacrificial Dagger, and I also had the Fanny Pack. Using those three items in tandem with each other, not only does it give me every time I use it a chance to get a consumable out of it, which would increase my points, but I can also trigger my own Polaroid invisibility by using the Ivy Bag without taking any damage, and then of course I can use my Sacrificial Dagger to deal with that. But obviously, because I know, just because of how my slow run was, it's definitely better to take Mama Mega in that situation, and I really thought that was gonna pay off. But like I said, you are trading that one spacebar item away for the luxury of actually taking your time. In some cases that might be worth it, I would imagine some cases that wouldn't be worth it. So if your run was already fast enough that you can actually get to Boss Rush without maybe sacrificing too much, I would imagine a different spacebar item might be better, but in this case I definitely think that Mama Mega is okay, because otherwise I wouldn't even make it to Boss Rush. And on a run that goes only to Mom's Heart, it's always more important to go for these objectives, because overall scores will be much lower, which means that the score bonus, which is basically the same for any run from Boss Rush, is gonna be that much more impactful, because it represents a higher relative percentage of the total score that people are gonna get, as opposed to on a run that goes to Mega Satan, for example, which has maybe like a 50,000 total score, as opposed to maybe like a 35 to a 40,000 on a run that goes to only Mama's Heart. So again, that was maybe a bit too strategic. I did talk a bit fast, but I definitely think that Mama Mega did, or at least Afterbirth Plus did introduce a lot of the shop items, or not shop items, just shops in general with these restock machines and Mama Mega plays, which are maybe not in the spirit of dailies, just the fact that it does take the risk out of the reward. It's usually always the fact, are you gonna actually rush to try to get to Boss Rush, or are you gonna explore and maybe bet your bets on getting maybe a sacrifice room, or maybe just visiting other rooms. But with Mama Mega, that risk versus reward really kind of gets out of the window, and the fact you can force it so often with the reroll machines and the restock machines does, I think, kind of take the challenge away from it. That was definitely one of my favorite part of the dailies that I actually enjoyed learning as I played them, was the fact that you always had to make a conscious decision at which point you would leave the floor. So maybe you would say, I just want to visit the treasure room, actually leave the floor, and then I can get to Boss Rush. Or maybe you would just say, I don't really have time, or maybe I do have time, but I would just feel so much more comfortable if I just got out of the floor now, because I did find my boss, and maybe I ignored the treasure room. Sure, sometimes it would turn out that treasure room contained attack X, and you would kind of bite yourself in the ass for it, but at the same time, in the majority of the cases when you did do that play, so to say, you could feel kind of snobby about it, because you made the right decision. And I feel like that risk versus reward is taken out of the context, and I definitely think like that was one of the biggest part in dailies, but as it is now, I would say that maybe other things have taken precedent. I'm not necessarily saying that this current meta, so to say, is bad, or I just think we have to adapt, and I'm still in that mindset that I was before, but obviously some of the things have changed and some of the things are different. So I think that we have to, as players, we have to account for those if we actually want to play better and get back on the top of the leaderboards. With that said, I had another interesting decision at the start, and we got Duality again. I fell into that trap yesterday when I picked up Duality, and I said I'm gonna go to Angel rooms, I'm gonna bomb the Angel statues, I'm gonna get a lot of points that way. I decided to go against that this run. I just really felt like if I do another experimental run just to see if Duality is actually any good, I might be in a bad position. But actually thinking back about it, I definitely think that there's some middle ground to be gained there. it's probably a good idea to take duality, because after all, item penalties aren't that big, and just getting to one angel room, it means that the item is actually gonna pay for itself. You just don't have to visit every single angel room, is what like I tried to do yesterday. What you could do is just maybe visit a few devil deals, and if you get strong enough, and only if you do get strong enough and you feel like you're comfortable enough, then maybe you can visit 1 or 2 angel rooms towards the end of the run. And of course, you still keep the benefits of having angel rooms, which means you have a chance of getting those good items. You also have a chance of getting some spirit hearts and things like that. But even better, when you do it this way, you're not risking your chances on not getting good devil deal items. So I would say that maybe the best way to go about it. Yesterday I went too hard on it. I went to every single angel room. In this case I didn't even pick up duality, but I definitely think that the middle ground is there somewhere. You just have to visit some angel rooms and not visit some devil rooms. And I'm really surprised it took me like two games to actually figure this out, because if you actually thought about it for a second, you probably came up to the same conclusion yourself. For some reason, I just sometimes feel like these items are very black and white. Either you go very deep on them, or either you just don't commit. And I definitely, like I said, the best way to utilize that item is to go maybe in the middle ground somewhere there. Besides that, you can see that this run was just, at this point it just went crazy. I really like whenever you get continuum shots with a high rate of fire, and in this case we also have Mom's Eye, so we're shooting 1 tears from the front of our head and 1 from the back of my head, so essentially it's working as a double shot. And because our tear rate is so high, just in a few seconds the room is filled with tears. It's just dealing a ton of damage. I could have picked up Monstrous Lung there. I decided not to, because I think this is a fun synergy. I don't really wanna kind of compromise on it too much. But you can see that in this final case with homing shots, it's just such a great, it's so great. It looks so nice. It just works well. You can see that tears kind of leaving the screen, re-entering, and really sometimes because of how many tears there are, it's hard to dodge enemy tears because you don't really see them. But I guess that's part of the fun. It was definitely a fun run in this one. It was kind of a crazy one. I did take some unnecessary damage, and just because even though this run was pretty fun, pretty strong in some regards, in the dark room there are still rooms which I feel like are a bit too unfair, and especially because there's so many tears on the screen, and with the small rock, I believe, not the small rock, but the rock that stuns enemies. Enemies can get quite unpredictable, and because they do get knocked around with the tears, I figured I'm not gonna explore too much, because if I walk into a room with like double adversary, I'm just gonna take like 5 or 6 hearts of damage. I might even end up dying, so I decided instead of exploring, I'm just gonna go to lamp, beat the lamp, and then just get the lamp bonus out of that. And in total, with it, finish in the 17th place, which is very good, which just goes to show, you know, it's probably not a good idea to experiment every single daily. I definitely like my decision of not taking duality as opposed to taking it yesterday, but I definitely think that I should have learned how to utilize that item just a bit better before I actually started making these weird decisions about it. Besides that, the rest was fine. We went to boss rush, which is, I think, is the biggest point contributor in this particular case, and all the rest of things. Sure, our damage penalty was a bit high, but you have to remember that we did lose the sacrifice room, and that's gonna rack up your damage penalty quite a bit. But overall, I can't nag too much on a bad run, and I hope that if you played it, you also got this crazy synergy. I know that some people didn't. I know a lot of people struggled with this one, but if you want to kind of experience the continuum and the double shot, and maybe even something else in there which I maybe missed, I would advise you to actually give it a spin. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.